The Clash from London Calling and All Lost in the Supermarket. I've been playing Johnny Appleseed from the new Assembly Best of Joe Strummer and the Mescaleros quite a lot. But Pat Carty has put a huge amount of work in at Hot Press into the whole thing, where Joe was in his life, what the Mescaleros meant, what was going on, all that kind of stuff, and where it stood really in terms of his career and in terms of the Clash. So I will be catching up with him and discussing all of that after a very swift break. Yep. Now, as promised, we're bringing Pat Carty from Hot Press into the fold tonight, and he's with us now via Skype. There you are, Pat. How are you today?
How are you doing, Tom? First of all, I want to get some business out of the way, Tom, first of all, right? Because of the day it is. It's a very special day in Ireland, a very special day in musical history in Ireland, because today is Tom Dunne's birthday. You've probably mentioned this about 20 times already. Wow. I was off listening to something else. But I want to say happy birthday, Tom. And I want to say thanks for, you've always been a good pal to me and lots of support, and I really appreciate it. And many happy returns.
Well, Pat, I won't lie. Thanks very much for that. I invited you onto the show tonight because I didn't want to be alone on my birthday. Okay,
Why break the cycle?
I hope this reflects, or we take this the right way, but when I thought of who would I like to talk to on the show, I thought of you first.
I'm nearly speechless.
Good. Which is rare. I thought there's no nicer man, and what really got me and made me think.
Argument here.
I'll drag him in. Is I've seen the level of enthusiasm that you've brought to the Joe Strummer album that's out at the moment.
That's a great link, Tom. That was really good. That was very professional.
Yeah, and I thought I'd love the lowdown on this, and I haven't really put the work into it myself. But I know that you have. I know you've written 10,000 words thereabouts for Hot Press.
Well, 10,000 might be an exaggeration. Even I can't get away with that. But I reread it because I knew I was talking to you. And even I thought, my God, I do go on a bit. But,
but you couldn't go on about a better man, though, could you? But a few things I really want to ask you about on this. One, when you start this, you start by pretty much defending the Clash. I mean, do we live in a world where you need to defend the Clash?
Well, I'd read the odd thing online and elsewhere where people were saying, it always happens when there's these greatest albums of all time poll and things like that. And everybody loves those, even if they say they don't. Like if you saw a magazine with those in it, you'd buy it. And so would I. And because the reason you'd buy it is because you'd be able to sit down with a cup of coffee and go, why have they included that? Or where's such and such? Or why is this album number 100 when it should be number 1 or whatever? But people always talk about the Clash. Well, the Clash, were they that good? They had a few singles, people said. And then I saw a thing on Twitter as well where someone else was saying the same thing. They couldn't believe that someone had said, the Clash weren't great. Now, in my opinion, the Clash are one of the bands, one of the great bands. And the great thing about the Clash is that they did it all in 5 years. So there's only 5 years that separates White Riot, which came out in March of 77, and Combat Rock, which came out in May of 82. And we'll ignore the album that came after that, the Cut the Crap one. That's just, leave that out. Although This Is England is a great song on it. But there's 5 years where they went from the garage to the US top 10. And, that's amazing, first of all, because bands now, they wouldn't make 2 albums in 5 years.
Is a bit of what the people have a problem with is that they were ambitious. That, they actually wanted to get to number 1. They wanted to be a big band, which is slightly against the punk kind of aesthetic.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think that, people always snipe about Joe Strummer's background, that his father was a diplomat, so he wasn't punk enough or some nonsense like that, as if coming from such a background precludes you from creating great art. That's some nice talking.
Yeah, or also not only precludes you from making great art, but being allowed into the gang almost.
Allowed into the gang. I mean, I think you touched on something good there about being ambitious, because I think maybe, and I'm not comparing the two of them, but I think that U2 suffered similar stuff from wanting to, here comes a band, The Clash, and then U2 later on, and maybe there's other bands who were willing to put up their hands and say, we'll try and take the baton from the Rolling Stones or the Who or whatever, and we'll go on and try and take it all the way. If we have a message that should be out, then we should be in Shea Stadium. So they could come along later on and say, let's...
Yeah, it's wanting to see how far you can take it. How far can we...
What's the point in doing it otherwise?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go see. Right, so I love the Clash. I love them. And I think they're brilliant band. And Manic Street Preachers, for instance, probably... Well, they wouldn't exist in the form they're in, was it not for the Clash?
Just that we mentioned U2, there's a great movie called The Futures Unwritten by... what was that director? It'll come back to me, but
Yeah.
it's a documentary about Joe Strummer done after he passed away, and there's loads of people interviewed. It's really good. If you haven't seen it, people should go and see it. But Bono is one of the talking heads, as he often is. I think he's down on the beach in Dalkey there, probably walked down from the house, and fair play to him. Wish I could do the same thing. And he's talking about it, but he talks about the legendary Clash gig in Trinity College.
Yeah.
You might even have been at that time.
No, I'm just the wrong. I know it's my birthday day, but I was on the wrong side of my birthday.
Just a bit young, were you?
Wasn't allowed to go, yeah.
I haven't been able to say that in a few decades.
No,
anyway, he all of you two were at that, or so they claim anyway. And I know people who were at that gig, and there's a mutual friend of ours, Mr. D. Fanning, who works out in Montrose, and he was at that, and he was at the one in the Top Hat in Dunleary, I think, which was the London Calling tour. I think that's what and he said, well, that was the better gig. That was one of the greatest gigs he's ever had. But that one in Trinity College, Bono has always said, listen, there wouldn't be U2 without that. And so that's just, and as you say, Manic Street Preachers, I think they're just one of the hundreds of bands. I think the sign of a great band is everybody who heard this, you put a pin anywhere in that and pick Complete Control or, White Riot or any of those, or White Man and Hammersmith Palais. You want to break into the music shop and get yourself a guitar after here.
You do. It ignites the fire. It ignites the fire, 100%. So I'm intrigued then to see where this album fits into the whole scheme of things, because I'm listening to a book, Philip Norman's book about Paul McCartney, and his post Beatles years are very tough years for Paul McCartney. So was there a bit of that with Joe Strummer when the Clash was gone?
Strangely enough, I was thinking that today when we decided to do this, that how could you explain it? I think Joe was about 31 when the Clash properly break up. So we're talking about early 86. They limped on after Combat Rock and after Mick Jones had got the boot, which was the big mistake. And, they put out that bad album and then they stopped. Now, Joe Strummer's about 31. There go. What do you do at that point when you've done it all? Paul McCartney probably had a similar thing. You've become this legendary band. And as we said, the Clash reached out for the baton and went for it all the way and very nearly got there all the way. So what do you do? So he was kind of at a loose end. And it's on there's one of the songs on this album. This is Assembly that we're talking about here, which has just been released, which is a fine compilation of Joe's post-Clash work. Love Kills is the theme song. Tom has a copy. Do you have the red one? Did you get the red one?
No, I haven't even opened it yet. Red vinyl, is it?
Yeah, I didn't get the red one.
Let's see, it's my birthday.
I didn't write the article quick enough. He's going to open it now and sicken me on his birthday.
Oh, did I get the red
While he's doing that.
Go on, you tell the story.
He's desperate to find out now. While he's tearing apart the cover. While he's doing that, the earliest thing on it is Love Kills, and that's the theme song from the Sid and Nancy movie.
Black vinyl. Go on.
Black vinyl, good, I'm glad. The Alex Cox Sid and Nancy movie about Sid Vicious and Nancy.
Spongy.
His poor unfortunate other half. It's a fairly woeful movie, to be honest with you. But Joe Strummer was brought in to do that. Apparently Joe saw a rough cut of it and he thought it was all right. And he wrote a load of songs for it. But the problem was his contract with CBS was still there and wouldn't allow him to do more than 2 songs. So in the credits for the movies, there's a lot of made-up band names, which are Joe Strummer songs, but they're made-up band names, so they wouldn't fall foul of the record company. But Love Kills is the earliest thing on this. Now, as I say, I didn't think that was a great movie, and I think that's the general consensus. And Love Kills is perhaps not the greatest song ever written, but what happens there is that he becomes friends with Alex Cox, and Alex Cox's next movie is the spaghetti western Straight to Hell,
right,
which features various Pogues, and Courtney Love is in it, a young Courtney Love is in it, and they go down to Spain to film that. Now, in between that, I'm jumping ahead there. In between that, he's walking along in London, and he runs into Don Letts. Don Letts, the famous former Roxy DJ. And Don Letts is part of Big Audio Dynamite now at this point. And Big Audio Dynamite is Mick Jones' post-Clash band. And, of course, Joe runs into him and says, come on, we'll have a beer. And he says, what are you doing? Oh, we're just recording the second album. So Strummer goes in and says, oh, well, here, I'll go in and have say hello, And he stays, and he ends up co-producing the album, co-writing 6 songs. And that album is called Number 10 Upping Street. And it's a pretty good record, and there's some great songs on it. And
Johnny Appleseed, is that one of those?
No. I know that's later on. No,
okay,
there's no Big Audio Dynamite in this compilation. But my reason I'd mention it is if people get to hear that album, there's a song called V13 and stuff like that, and Beyond the Pale. That's what the Clash could have done next.
Okay.
I think that's the direction that we're going in, and it's a shame it didn't happen, but it kind of did happen in a way. Anyway, we're off down in Spain. Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, I thought the songs that he was writing were songs that were going to Joe's album. They were going to the Big Audio Dynamite album.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
that's right. So he co-wrote them with Mick Jones. So the 6 co-writes or something like that. But co-produces the whole album anyway. So they became friends again. So at that point, it could have happened, but sure, I don't know.
The Lennon and McCartney, eh? And very much so. So what these ones then, things like Johnny Apple, because I think these songs are brilliant. Johnny Appleseed is a piece of
we're
class.
Jumping a long way ahead. I mean, most of the ones here are with a band that he formed called the Mescaleros. There's a few things. There is, let me see, Sleepwalk, which is from his first solo album. It's called Earthquake Weather, which came out in the middle of the 80s, which is no lost classic or anything like that. And strangely enough, Sleepwalk, he tried to place that song with Nelson Riddle because he thought Frank Sinatra might want to record it. That seems unlikely, but you know, that's apparently the story. But anyway, in the 90s, he finally gets free of the CBS contract. So he can record himself. If the Clash ever get back together, they'll still be on CBS, but he can make his own records now. And then he finally gets a band together. And that band are called the Mescaleros. Various people he met. He started going to Glastonbury. He started hanging out. Started meeting people. They were all saying, "Joe, you got to do your own record." You know, he had done lots of soundtrack stuff in the meantime. There's a great soundtrack of a film called Walker, which I would recommend people try and get a hold of. That's again is an Alex Cox movie. It's a very folky kind of Latin record. It's great. And he also produced the Pogues in that. He produced Hell's Ditch, which I think is the best Pogues record. But again, that's another day, Marge.
That's a discussion for another day, indeed. Yes.
And he played on the how about the Ulcer Says No tour, because Philip Chevron's Ulcer. So they called it the tour Ulcer Says No. That's a good one. Anyway, he forms the Mescaleros. The first Mescaleros album comes out in 1999, and that is called Rock Art and the X-Ray Style. And I remember at the time, it was the lead review in Uncut magazine. Do you know your man who was working on Uncut at the time, Alan Jones, who was in the Melody Maker, a lovely man, and he wrote a big long review of this, and that was enough. I went and bought it on the strength of that anyway at the time, and it is a fantastic record because it brings in it's the best Joe Strummer record since. It might be the best one since London Calling.
Ooh, boy. I
like Sandinista and I like Combat Rock, but I think that's a great record. Yeah. And a lot of that is on this. So what you're talking about on this is you're talking about, I think, the best song on it, which is Yalla Yalla, which is Buried Away on Side 4, which is just a marvellous song where he talks about, Distance No Object, Rastafari. It's all the old Joe Strummer themes, and he's talking about freedom and liberty and all this. And it's the kind of thing, as I said in the article, it's the kind of thing that should be carved on a statue somewhere near the Westway, on the foot of a statue. It's that kind of stuff. It's inspiring stuff. It's not. It's so much music today, Tom, doesn't inspire.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm very taken to. You mentioned the year that I'm 97. He's dead by what is it, 2002 or something?
I think it's not. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I think it's 99, but he dies in 2002. So there's another Mescaleros record which has one of the songs that you mentioned there.
Johnny Appleseed. That's Johnny Appleseed. Yeah, that's a great track.
What a great song! And there's a song, and actually, I should quote this to you. There's a song on it called. It's not on the compilation, but it's called Bindibaji, right?
Yes, now, I've played Bindibaji. You know this song? It's brilliant. What happens, the great thing about this song, what happens in it, and I have the quote here if I can bloody find it, is that someone in the course of the song, he's in London, and some fella stops him in the street in the song, and he's just arrived in from Australia or something, and he says, "Listen, I'm looking for mushy peas." Yeah. And Joe says, "Well, we have loads of stuff." And he lists off all the kind of restaurants in his area in London. I said, "But I don't know where you get mushy peas." And the man says, "Anyway, who are you? What do you do?" And he says, "I'm in a band." And he says, "Oh, yeah? What kind of music do you play?" So Joe stands back in the song, right? He hesitates, he cogitates, he ruminates, and then he opens the floodgates. That's pretty good. That's sensational,
right? And this is what he says. He says, raga, bangra, two-step tanga, mini music on the go, surf beat, backbeat, front beat, backseat, hop, rockabilly, lindy hop, Gaelic heavy metal fans fighting in the road, Sunday boozers for chewing gum users, they got a crazy DJ and she's really letting go. And that nearly sums up the best.
He's here all day, Pat Carty. That was absolutely beautiful. I have to ask you.
The end of it.
Go on,
There's another record that comes out after he dies, Streetcore, and it's just as good as the other two. They're fantastic. The three records, they should have re-released the whole three of them. But to get to the end of it, just when Joe's on the last tour, I mean, first of all, I saw him on those tours. I know you did as well, and I got to shake his hand one night after an Olympia show, and I'll never forget it. And the great memory that sticks with me is that he was doing the encore, and he came out he launches into White Riot, and the other guys in the band, who he must have had at least 20 years on, weren't ready. And he's kind of turning around and he's waving at them. Come on. that's, it was just,
Yeah.
that was proper rock and roll. Now, in that film I mentioned earlier, there's a couple of clips of this. He's playing a gig in Acton Town, where I used to live myself. And he's playing in the town hall. I used to walk by it every day. And it's a benefit for firefighters. This is on his very last tour. And in the audience is Mick Jones. Okay?
Yeah.
And whatever happened that night, whatever Mick Jones had in his mind or whatever, he said, I'm going to get up. I'm going to get up. Yeah. So he gets up for the encore and they play Bank Robber. They play White Riot because Joe shouts out, it's in A. And they do appropriately enough London's Burning. Yeah. And there's footage in that movie. Julian Temple was the director I was trying to think of. And as I say in the article, I've seen that a load of times. And if I have had enough Chardonnay some nights when that's on, that could move a grown man to tears just because they got together. Because, unfortunately, a couple of months, not even a couple of months, just a month or so later, it's only a month before he died. He was at home. Apparently, he was reading the paper. He was 50 years old. He had a heart defect that was never diagnosed, and he passed away peacefully on the couch. And I think we lost, and as this record attests, there's a couple of live tracks on this record with the Masqueraders, not from that night, even though bootleg exists, so it's over on that shelf. But it just proves how he went out swinging. He went out to the top, and we lost one of the absolute greats that day.
Absolutely, so sad to hear. I'm going to play the Bindi. I know it's not on this, but the one about the mushy peas is just as good as it gets. Pat, that was an absolute pleasure and a privilege, and thank you very much for spending time with me on my birthday.
Can I take a breath now? Yeah,
you may take a breath. Yes, and we'll get a song about mushy peas on the radio. The album is called Joe Strummer Assembly, by the way, and it's a beautiful album, isn't it? Well,
it's on. It's for trivia fans. It's on Dark Horse Records, and that is Dark Horse Records that George Harrison formed in the 70s. Wow. So I think it's Danny Harrison had a lot to do. George Harrison's son had a lot to do.
Great. Pat, and it's also up
in shops now, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, in shops now, and up on your full 20,000 word article up on hotpress.com.
Has it grown? I think this thing is like a mushroom. It's growing.
That's it.
Sorry, I should say that before I go.
You should.
Obviously, we've piqued your interest here now. So if people either search for my name or failing that, they can search on hotpress.com and look for Joe Strummer. You'll find that article, and hopefully you can peruse it at your leisure and enjoy it.
Beautiful.
And several others by me as well while you're there.
A pleasure, as always, Pat. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.